Assalamu alaikum students, hope you all are well. I'm here with another video, and if you have not subscribed my channel, do subscribe Pact Studies Pro. Do hit the bell icon so you can get the new updates of the new videos. Let's start this video. In this video we are going to discuss many of the topics starting from the Simon Commission. So the Simon Commission basically was the Government of India Act 1919 included a provision to set up a commission after 10 years to suggest further reforms in India. So the British conservative government feared losing power to the Labour Party, which was sympathetic to the Indian nationalism and might make concessions. So a committee of 7 British members headed by Sir John Simon was established with no Indian representation in that committee at all. All Indian parties united against the commission. The Indian National Congress decided as its Madras session to boycott the commission and organize a mass demonstration. The common slogan throughout India was "Simon, go back." Despite the opposition, the commission continued its work, and Lord Birkenhead, Secretary of State for India, stated that the unanimous agreement would be impossible with Indian representation. So the Simon Commission's report was published in May 1930 in 2 volumes. Now, if we talk about the reasons for the opposition, the commission had no Indian representation and was headed by Sir John Simon. It was comprised of 7 British members and it was sent to examine the 1919 reforms. The exclusion of Indians led to different viewpoints and the commission failure. The British argued that including a few Indians couldn't represent all interests and would hinder the commission's effectiveness. Indians believed that the commission should include Indian members to address issues relating to India, which was quite understandable. And the Viceroy claimed that including Indians would prevent unanimous agreement because there was kind of a deadlock between INC and Muslim League. So Indians boycotted the Simon Commission due to the lack of representation and little hope for favorable outcomes. And the commission was seen as opposing Indian self-government and was carefully selected by the Conservative Party, which resisted concessions to Indians. Now, if we talk about the final commission report, the Simon Commission report was published in May 1930 with the following representations, as you can see on the screen, that it established a federal system with more powers to the provinces and the diarchy system, placing provincial governments in the hands of ministries responsible to be elected legislatures. Governors to select all ministers from parties with majority support, and provincial prime ministers to be free from control by the governor or central government. NWFP, which was North West Frontier Province, to be given a legislative council but not a provincial government. Sindh would not be separated from Bombay. No changes in the central executive. A council of Greater India to be set up to represent India and individual provinces for discussing matters of national concern. But it had an impact as well. The Simon Commission report was published in May 1930 was unacceptable to both Muslim League and the Congress. They both rejected the report. So after that, Nehru report came into the scene. In December 1927, the Indian National Congress decided in its Madras session to boycott the Simon Commission and call for the mass demonstrations. So the Secretary of State of India challenged Indians to create a unanimous constitutional scheme in Britain. So Indian leaders accepted this challenge and an all parties conference was held in May 1928 to draft a constitution chaired by Pandit Motilal Nehru. The resulting Nehru report was approved in September 1928. The main points of the report were that it proposed dominion status for India entailing a semi-independent government under the British Empire, suggested India become a federation with two-chamber parliament, adopting a bicameral legislature, and advocated for residuary powers to be vested in the central government. It opposed separate electorates or weightage for minorities, but proposed minority protection through reserved seats in the central parliament. Advocated for universal suffrage, recommended Hindi as an official language of India, proposed granting full provincial status to NWFP and separating Sindh from Bombay to form a separate province. Nehru report was basically rejected. Why? Because the Nehru report, drafted by an all-party conference, alarmed many Muslims as it seemed to disregard their views and the agreements of the Lucknow Pact. So on January 21, 1929, All India Muslim Conference rejected this Nehru report, and because of the concerns over the Muslim rights. The report proposed no separate electorates or reserved seats for Muslims at the centre, which Muslim League strongly opposed. Muslim League also envisioned a loose federation where provinces would have an autonomy over matters like education and finance. And but contrary to the Nehru report, visions of a central government means Nehru report wanted a strong central government, but Muslim League wanted strong provincial governments. So Muslims objected Hindi as an official language, seeing no future in their relationship with the Hindus. And Mr. Jinnah proposed 4 key changes to make the proposals acceptable to Muslims. So he also said that if they would do these 4 changes, we will accept it. That 1/3 of the elected representatives of the central parliament should be Muslims, number 1. In Punjab and Bengal, seats should be reserved for Muslims on population basis. Residuary powers should be left to the provinces with no central government. And Sindh and NWFP should have provincial status, full provincial status. But these changes were rejected by the Indian National Congress. So this moment described by Mr. Jinnah as the parting of the ways, and it was a significant step towards the eventual partition of India. So Nehru report aimed to show British that the Congress could produce a constitution acceptable to all the political opinions, but leading Muslim figures disillusioned with the conference that they would be never trusted. So Mr. Jinnah later presented his 14 points in response to this Nehru report. So let's talk about Mr. Jinnah's 14 points. Mr. Jinnah presented his 14 points at the annual meeting of All India Muslim League in Delhi in March 1929 as a response to the Nehru report of 1928. It was a legal, proper, documented, formal document. And the Nehru report's 3 main points, like unitary form of government, joint electorates, and Hindi as the national language, were against the Muslim interests. So Jinnah proposed 4 amendments, but they were rejected by the Congress. So these points comprehensively covered all the aspects of the Muslim demands of that time. So the Nehru report raised suspicion among the Muslims that eventually led Jinnah to formulate his 14 points. And these 14 points became the basis of the Muslim demands in negotiation with Congress and the British government for the next 20 years, and ultimately led to the creation of Pakistan. And Jinnah believed that it was the right time to present these 14 points as the Congress was pushing the Nehru report. Most of the 14 points were later included in the Government of India Act 1935, while the Nehru report was largely forgotten by people. So now let's discuss about the Salt March. It began at 12th March from Gandhi's ashram near Ahmedabad to seaside village Dandi, and Gandhi went to the village Dandi by foot with his many thousands of followers It was a 24-day march and it became so popular. The causes basically were that British forbade the making of the salt except under license from the government, and there were unfair salt laws, and Indians wanted to show their oppression against the British laws, and British goods, schools and colleges were boycotted, but Muslims did not join this campaign. Okay. After that, another important topic, a small topic which was called Allahabad Address. In 1930, Dr. Allama Iqbal chaired a meeting of Muslim League at Allahabad, and he emphasized to work towards achieving an independent homeland for Muslims. He said that there would be no peace and prosperity until there is a separate country for Muslims. So he stated that he would like to see Punjab, NWFP and Balochistan merged into a single Muslim state within or outside the British Empire. Allama Iqbal did not advocate for the inclusion of Kashmir or Bengal despite their Muslim majority status. Now, if we talk about the reasons for the idea of proposed in the Allahabad Address, Allama Iqbal suggested that partitioning India because there were many attempts to unite Hindus and Muslims, but they were failed. So he believed conflicts between the two nations were inevitable without separation. And Iqbal also supported the two-nation theory and advocated for a separate Muslim state. He also argued that India's diverse society made Western democracy impractical and would perpetuate Hindu dominance. So Iqbal justified the demand for a separate Muslim India to protect Muslim interest and identity with India's communal groups. Now, if we talk about the importance of the Allahabad Address, he was the first Muslim leader to suggest partition of the subcontinent, and he was considered as the father of the ideology of Pakistan. He also proved a clear-cut guideline for the Muslims to work on, and his poetry was also a source of inspiration for the Muslims of India. So now after that there is another topic which is called round table conferences, and it's a very important topic. There were many times there is like a 7-mark or 14-mark question which comes from this particular topic. So let's talk about the introduction first. Despite the opposition of Simon Commission, they were still managed to produce a 2-volume report. So British called the Roundtable Conference to discuss the Simon Commission recommendations, and there was a total of 3 Roundtable conferences between 1930 to 1932. So in 1930, the Muslim League and Congress remained deeply divided, and it was like signaled the end of Jinnah's efforts to reconcile between Hindus and Muslims. And the Labour government in 1929 brought hope for the solution, but complications were so many. So there was a lack of unity among Indians, and it made difficult for the British to determine their next step. And it was also exaggerated by the Gandhi civil disobedience campaign about the salt laws. So despite Indian opposition, the Simon Commission produced a report, and the Congress boycotted the first roundtable conferences in November 1930. Without Congress partition, there was a little progress, and Viceroy Lord Irwin had to meet Gandhi after the conference, and they paved the way for the further conferences. However, Gandhi's hardline stance and claim to represent all of India angered the Muslim League leaders like Iqbal and Jinnah. They were so much angered. And a third roundtable conference was convened in November 1932, which was the Congress, which Congress also boycotted. And the conference finalized reports and recommendations led to the Government of India Act 1935. So if we talk about every conference, we are going to see the main points of every conference. We are going to see the successes and the failures of every conference. So first of all, first roundtable conference was held in November 1930. It was attended by Muslim League, the Liberals, the Labour Party of Britain, and the representatives of the princely states. Congress refused to attend the first RTC, because Gandhi was imprisoned due to the civil disobedience, the civil disobedience movement. And okay, now if we talk about the successes of the first RTC, they proposed a federal system of government in India with a division of power between the central government and provinces. They also emphasized the states would join the Indian Federation if their rights were guaranteed. The British agreed to initiate responsible and representative governments at the provincial level and to share power at the center. Sindh was to be a separate province, and reforms would be introduced in the NWFP. 8 committees were formed to address constitutional issues and settle disputes. However, there were many failures as well, like no major progress about princely states was done. A first roundtable conference encountered a deadlock regarding the federal system. The criminal question remained unresolved in the absence of the Congress, the largest political party at that time, and Gandhi's arrest for leading the non-cooperation movement further complicated the situation. The second roundtable conference, Indian representatives as the first roundtable conference urged Gandhi to halt the non-cooperation civil disobedience movement and attend the second set of talks. So Gandhi met the Viceroy Lord Irwin in February 1931, and despite the objections from Winston Churchill, Lord Irwin aimed to involve the Congress in discussions, and there was a pact signed between Gandhi and Irwin, which is called Gandhi-Irwin Pact in 1931, leading to the abolishment of the non-cooperation movement. The second roundtable conference took place in London, and Gandhi asserted that Congress represented all Indians and denied the existence of any minorities and minority problems in India, including the untouchables, and at that time they included them as Hindus. So Muslim and minority leaders disagreed with the Gandhi's claims. If we talk about the second RTC's successes, both the main political parties of India were present, like INC and Muslim League. There was abolition of diarchy was discussed and decided. 3 new provinces were made: Sindh, NWFP, and Orissa, and 2 communities were established to address minority issues during second roundtable conferences. But there were some failures as well. Like the new British government was less keen to reach a compromise in India. There was a deadlock between Jinnah and Gandhi over the rights of minorities, and British also wanted to impose their own solutions to the Indian problem. So this was the major issue. Now, if we talk about the third roundtable conferences, it was held in November 1932. Lord Irwin was replaced by Lord Wellington, who was less prepared to make concessions. So non-cooperation movement was restarted by Gandhi, and Gandhi and Nehru were arrested as well. So the Congress and major princes boycotted the conference. Jinnah, considered a troublemaker, was not invited in that Congress, and he went into an voluntary exile. So Aga Khan represented the Muslim League with only 46 delegates present at the conference. Communal awards, which I'll explain later, by Prime Minister MacDonald were awarded. If we talk about the successes, it was attended by 46 delegates, including Sir Aga Khan. Little discussion was done about the future of India. There was an establishment of a federal legislature in India comprising elected representatives and nominees from the princely states. They finalized reports from committees formed during the second roundtable conference. They did not exaggerate existing issues. Now, if we talk about the failures, no main leaders have attended the conference, like Jinnah was not invited and Gandhi was in jail. No important progress was made, and no major princes attended the conference as well. And if we talk about the impact, the British contended the Indians wasn't prepared for the self-rule. So they just resulted that India is, both the parties have the deadlock, so they are not ready for the self-rule. Now, if we talk about Gandhi-Irwin Pact, there are some added topics which had to be discussed, and sometimes 4-mark questions can come from these topics. First one is Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Gandhi did not attend the first roundtable conference as he was in jail, but Lord Irwin wanted to sort it out. So he met Gandhi multiple times in jail, and he urged him to end the non-cooperation movement, and Gandhi agreed, and they had a pact called Gandhi-Irwin Pact. The main points of the pact was that Lord Irwin promised to release most political prisoners, and they would return the seized properties of these prisoners as well. In exchange, Gandhi would, relinquish his demand of full independence, and he would, call off the non-cooperation movement. Then we have communal awards. That in 1932, Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald announced the communal awards due to the inability to resolve communal disputes at the first roundtable conference. They granted separate electorates and weightage to all minority communities. Muslims were given more representation in Muslim minority provinces, but had their majority reduced in Muslim majority provinces like in Punjab and Bengal. Despite Muslims comprising of 56 of the population in Punjab, they were only allocated 47.6% of the seats. And Muslims demanded that residuary powers to be vested in the provinces, but this was not accepted. And however, they endorsed that it would be in the greatest interest of the country. And the decision of the separate Sindh from Bombay presidency was a major consolation for the Muslims. Gandhi and Congress rejected the award and launched a campaign against it as well. Then there was a declaration of Indian independence and Poona Pact. There are also important topics which we are going to discuss later on. Then there is a slide about introduction and importance of Chaudhry Rehmat Ali's work. I have already discussed Chaudhry Rehmat Ali's work in a previous chapter slide, so you can refer to the chapter of the famous personalities for this detailed video about Chaudhry Rehmat Ali. Now, if we talk about the Government of India Act, in March 1933, a white paper was published by a British government to announce its proposal for how to govern India, despite the fact that roundtable conferences were a big failure. So white paper was basically, it was a discussion document issued before the bill was presented in the British Parliament, and safe Indian delegates were invited from India to take part in the discussion to just show off to the British parliamentarians that they have called some Indians to discuss the bill. So discussed and approved by the British Parliament in December 1934, and in August 1935 that bill became the Government of India Act. Now if we talk about the main features of this act, it was a federal system of government was introduced, and it declared India Federation, and both British Indian provinces and princely states would be under the dominion. So the central government adopted a bicameral system consisting of Council of State and the Assembly, with representatives from both British Indian provinces and princely states. The Council of State would comprise of 256 members from the British India and 156 from the princely states, while the Assembly would be consisting of 250 members from the British India and 125 from the princely states. So members from the British India were elected, while those from the princely states would be nominated. Diarchy was implemented at the central government level, with Governor General who would oversee defense, foreign affairs, religious and tribal matters, and Governor General always would be British and had special powers and could veto laws and passed by the Assembly. Provincially representative governments were introduced with elected members granted some autonomy in decision making. So provincial governors also always British and would have special powers, including the authority to dismiss ministers and even dissolve the entire administration during emergencies. There would be additional voting rights were granted to the local population with the property qualification for voting, and it would result that a total of 35 million people would be eligible voters, including 5 million women. 3 new provinces were made: NWFP, Orissa, and Sindh. They were created, and bringing the total number of provinces to 11. Now, if we talk about the important results of this act, provincial governments gained autonomy in self-governing India, and however, all the sides in India opposed the changes. Princes resented the loss of power, Hindus saw it akin to slavery, and Muslims found it unacceptable due to retention of special powers by the British. So if we talk about the reactions of the Indians towards the Government of India Act, the proposals faced opposition from all sides. As I have just told you, Nehru said it a charter of slavery, and Jinnah deemed it as a thoroughly rotten and fundamentally bad act. And many considered the system to be laden with safeguards but lacking real powers. And the part concerning with the central government was never introduced due to the rejection by the princes. The Governor General remained head of the Federation with special powers in external relations and defense, and while provincial governors had authority to dismiss ministers and even dissolve the entire administration, and both the designations were only for the British. And British retention of key decision related to external relations and defense were seen as drawbacks. Minority rights, particularly those of Muslims, were inadequately protected, and the property qualification for voting limited to only 25% of the population. So it was so low. Now, if we talk about the importance, and one more thing, that emergency powers granted to the Governor Generals further undermine the appearance of Indian empowerment. So, if we talk about the importance of this act, it was the last constitutional reform introduced before the independence, and the Government of India Act established a federal system and a proper parliamentary system with 2 law-making houses, the Council of State and the Legislative Assembly, which were greatly expanded. Princely states were also allowed to participate in the political affairs, and 3 new provinces like Sindh, NWFP, and Orissa were also created. There was a greater provincial autonomy was awarded, and the act enlarged the size of the electorate. There were many people who could vote now. Although the British had no immediate intention to call off the control over India, but their power of over the provinces was weakened. And this act also served as the basis for the future constitution of India and Pakistan after the independence, because with Pakistan operating under the Government of India Act until 1956, as it's when its new constitution was made in 1956, until that time Pakistan was using the amended version of the Government of India Act. So that was it by the Government of India Act. Now we are going to see a very important topic, which is called elections of 1937. Elections of 1937 is one of the very important topics, and the 14-mark question or 7-mark questions from this topic and mostly comes in the CIEs. So first of all, let's see the introduction. Both the political parties, Muslim League and Congress, rejected the Act of 1935, but both the parties wanted to contest the elections of 1937. So Nehru at first boycotted the elections, but after negotiations with the congressmen, he agreed to contest. And Jinnah came back in practical politics and became the permanent president of Muslim League, and he still believed on in Hindu-Muslim unity, but he would be knowing after the elections he never ever asked again about the Hindu-Muslim unity. So the Muslim League campaigned on two principles: self-government for India and greater provincial autonomy with safeguards for minority communities. However, the election results was a great disappointment for the Muslim League. Now let's talk about the results. Okay. Congress achieved an absolute majority in 5 provinces and emerged as the largest single party in 4 others, leading to the invitations to form ministries in several provinces. Congress viewed itself as the sole representative party for Indians, and for the Muslim League, it was their first major election since the internal split of the early 1930s, and it was a big, blow for them. However, the Congress Muslim League only won 109 seats out of 482 reserved seats for Muslims. So even they couldn't get the Muslim seats, leading to lessons on contesting elections and organizational improvement. The League realized its support was stronger in areas where Muslims were in a minority rather than the majority provinces. Because in the Muslim majority provinces, Muslims felt less threatened by the Hindu domination. So the League recognized its image problem because many of its leaders perceived as aristocrats and princes, and while many Muslims were poor and illiterate and they thought that they were non-serious kind of Muslim aristocrats which are not serious about the politics. So they came to know about their image problem. Now, if we talk about the importance or benefits of 1937 elections for the Muslim League, there were some benefits as well. Because it was the first major election for Muslim League, all the groups of Muslim League got united for these elections and they learned a lot about campaign organization and planning. They also realized how important it is to go to the masses of the society. And they also realized that their support laid in the Muslim minority areas because the Muslim majority areas did not feel any threatened. They were not threatened by the Hindu domination. Muslim League also had an image problem because majority of the party members were aristocrats, prince or nawabs, and whereas Congress was more popular among all the socio-economic segments of the society. So there were some drawbacks of the election of 1937 as well, that Indian National Congress claimed to represent all Indians. They secured 711 seats out of a total of 1585 seats and winning only 26 Muslim seats and representing about 5% of Indian Muslims. So Congress alienation of Muslim League after the elections created difficulties in future negotiations, and Muslim League performance was dismal. They won only 109 seats out of 482 Muslim seats, so which was so less. In Punjab, the Muslim League won one out of 86 Muslim seats, with most seats taken by Punjab Unionist Party. Muslims perceived the British as more concerned with establishing new provincial governments than safeguarding Muslim rights, leading to further escalated problems. Now, if we talk about elections, that why did Muslim League could not perform better in 1937 elections, it's a very, very important question. Muslim League performed poorly due to several reasons, like internal divisions within the party weakened its effectiveness, lack of prior experience in contesting major elections was the main reason. There was a poor organizational structure which was contributed to the electoral setback. Some leaders were perceived as elite people, and they were disconnected with the masses of the society. Not all Muslims felt threatened at that time, so they thought that there is no need to vote only to the Muslim League party. as a Muslim. Now, if we talk about another question, that what led to the Congress party's victory in the 1937 elections, they enjoyed a very widespread grassroots support due to its mass contact campaigns. The party had support both in rural and urban areas, with wealthy urbanites, and backing it with the rural area population as well. With long political experience, Congress maintained unity among its ranks, and they were united, they were organized, and they knew how to campaign properly. And they, had a proper, they had control over newspapers, and they spreading their ideas nationwide. Uh, their extensive campaign strategies and organizational structure and their close contact with the people were crucial factors that they won the elections. And despite having leaders with foreign backgrounds, Congress leaders portrayed themselves as common people and remained close to the masses of the society. And it was a very, very important point. Now, let's talk about the famous Congress rule of 1937 to 39. First of all, in its introduction, we all know that the Congress won the 1937 elections, and Nehru got assurance from Lord Lithinglow, who was the viceroy at that time, that provincial governors would not use their special powers to interfere in the provincial governments. So Congress formed 8 cabinets in 8 provinces, and in Muslim League lead areas, Congress refused to cooperate with Muslim League, and Muslims could form government only if they would leave Muslim League. It was a condition by the Congress. So Congress soon introduced a series of anti-Muslim policies under its rule, and which worried the Muslims. Now, if we talk about the Congress policies, there were atrocities against the Muslims. The Congress rule was deeply resented due to various atrocities committed against Muslims, like including difficulties in practicing their religion openly and freely. There was a ban on azan. In some areas, the Muslims' call to prayer, which was azan, was banned, and pigs considered as unclean and kosher for Muslims, they were pushed into mosques. There was attacks on worshippers, organized attacks on Muslim worshippers, noisy processions, and loud music near mosques during prayers and azans were very common, and it disturbed the religious events or functions. Bande Mataram controversy. Bande Mataram was the national anthem, and it was a song invoking a Hindu goddess, and it was imposed on both Hindus and Muslims to sing that song in schools and in various events. So it was like very much annoying for the Muslims. Varda educational scheme, which was based on Gandhi's ideas, this scheme introduced Hindi as the sole language, and it removed religious education and including hand spinning in the curriculum. It also promoted co-education and portrayed Muslim rulers negatively, which was offensive towards the Muslims. Then we had Vidya Mandir scheme. This scheme set up schools in Hindu temples, taught the Muslim rulers were cruel and Hindu rulers were heroes, and was strongly opposed by the Muslims. Then disdain for the Muslim League. After the elections, Congress refused to cooperate with the Muslim League, even in areas where the League was the largest party. And Muslim majority provinces, Congress allowed Muslims to form the government only if they were not the Muslim League members. Then campaign against the Muslim League. Congress launched a campaign to weaken and discredit the Muslim League, and they aimed to demoralize its leadership. Then we have Hindi-Urdu controversy, that Congress promoted Hindi as an official language, and they sidelined Urdu and created further resentment among the Indian Muslims. Then tricolor flag was issued by the Congress, and it was called Tiranga. Further, it fueled the Muslim resentment. After forming the ministry, Congress displayed the tricolor Tiranga on official and significant non-official buildings, and it was mandatory to respect and salute for it. And despite being a party flag, the tricolor was treated as a national flag, which upsets Muslims who felt that the national flag should be agreed upon all political parties. There was a lack of consensus. Muslims and other political parties, including the Muslim League, expected a national flag to be chosen by a mutual consent, but Congress imposed their party flag on everyone. So these were the main issues of the Congress policies. Now, if we talk about the day of deliverance, that the World War II started in September 1939, and British announced that India was at war with Germany too, without the consultation on the with the Congress ministers. So Congress objected and resigned from the ministries, and Muslims were pleased, and Jinnah announced to celebrate Day of Deliverance on 22nd December 1939 to mark the end of Congress rule. So the Congress party bitterly resented and the call for celebration. The Congress party actually bitterly resented the call for celebration, and Nehru declared that there seemed to be no common ground between Congress and the other party. The deep divide between Hindu and Muslim was about to become evident. If we talk about Muslim League under Congress rule, there was a rejection of Congress Muslim League coalition by Congress, which was offered by Jinnah, and there was a massive campaign to awaken Muslims and warn them of Hindus' aims of establishing Hindustan. It was led by also Mr. Jinnah. Muslim League started to reach the masses of the country. The membership of Muslim League grew dramatically after this 1937 to 39 Congress rule. Chief ministers of Punjab, Bengal and Assam joined Muslim League in 1938, and Congress did not accept Muslim League as the only party representing Indian Muslims, but they recognized Jinnah as a leader when the talks between Jinnah and Nehru were organized. And in a short, very poor, there were very poor relations between Muslim League and Congress was there by 1939. Now, if we talk about the outbreak of World War II, British announced that India was also in the war with Germany by September 1939, and Congress ministers objected and they resigned. Muslim League celebrated that day as a day of deliverance, and the Congress was greatly offended by this, and Congress passed a resolution to show its entire disapproval of Nazism and fascism. And Congress would not support Britain without a promise of independence after the war. But Jinnah, on the behalf of Muslim League, also demanded an end of anti-Muslim policies, which were mainly, organized by the Congress. No law affecting Muslims should be passed unless 2/3 of Muslim members supported it, and Congress should agree to form coalitions in provincial administration. British and Congress both rejected Jinnah's demands, and throughout the war, Muslim League did not show full support to British. However, like Congress, they also disapproved of Nazism and fascism. So first of all, we have to see what is Nazism. It is an ideology and practice of Nazi Party, which was National Socialist German Workers' Party, and it was based on racist nationalism and national expansion and state control of the economy. Whereas fascism was a radical and authoritarian nationalist political ideology, which was led by Adolf Hitler, who was a dictator of Germany. So I hope that the main small topics of this whole chapter are clear to you. We'll see you inshallah in the next video. Thank you.